As such, they contribute directly to the academic achievements of young people and to the reputation of institutions overall. I think there's some interesting work going on at Huddersfield looking at those, the relationship between those two things. So I have an invitation to offer to the gentleman from the Publishers Association. I would like you to come and see some of our member libraries. You might see fewer books on the shelves and a richer online environment, but you will also see thousands of young people working in the library, using all its resources and relying on the library staff to help navigate their way through those resources. I think that we might also use that opportunity to discuss some of the challenges that libraries, academic libraries, are going to be facing going forward, and these are pretty significant. We all know that in the immediate future, there's going to be a huge pressure on costs for libraries, as there will be for other university functions, as the cut in the teacher grant takes effect. It will be very difficult indeed for libraries to meet the sort of increases in cost that are being talked about. Now, nobody wants libraries to lose access to content, but believe me, it is a discussion that is going on everywhere, and it's something that you do have to face. Going beyond that and moving forward a couple of years, we're going to be looking at a situation in which students are making a huge contribution to the finances of the universities and running up significant debts, up to 50,000, as some people have talked about. We are going to move to a situation in which undergraduate education is a market driven by three closely related measures of student satisfaction, student outcomes, and the overall reputation of the university. Now, we already know from the work that HEFCE's commissioned that students rate the quality of library facilities as one of the top 10 factors they want to be able to look at when making a decision about which university to go to. And as every librarian will tell you, for undergraduates, the provision of academic journals is an important part of that, of whether the student is satisfied with the library, but they also care about, is there enough space to work between lectures, do they have easy access to the texts their lecturer has described as core, including textbooks, whether they have good quality IT, and whether they can find the resources they need quickly. So for anyone running a university library service, there are going to be a number of calls on their resources which need to be balanced against each other. And that's going to have to come from a dwindling pool of resources in the short term. Now, I've mentioned student satisfaction, and I'm guessing that some in the audience are going to be sceptical about whether it is a good thing that student satisfaction becomes an important driver of how library resources might be spent in the future. Now, they might even view with some alarm the prospect of a student body which sees itself as a consumer of university services and demands a lot from those services for the much higher price they'll be paying. I would argue that's fair enough, actually, that it's right to question what in fact would be a very simplistic model of the delivery of value for higher education, for three reasons. The first is, I think, the logical distinction that we can all see between satisfaction with the service and outcomes. The second relates to some of the things that drive satisfaction, the major determinants of whether somebody is satisfied with the service. And the third relates to the failure of satisfaction on its own to capture the wider benefits of the undergraduate education system. So coming first to the issue of student satisfaction, I don't think you can assume that this correlates directly with academic outcomes. It's a slightly crass example, but if you imagine a young student who's spoon-fed information by their lecturer and their librarian, she may feel very satisfied with the service that she's getting and feel that her needs are being met. But actually, at the same time, she may be receiving a poorer quality education in that she's not learned the skills and tools for inquiry that she needs to develop her ideas. And as a result, she may be less well equipped for the world of work or for further study than she would have been if she'd been challenged more and more had been demanded from her. In other words, a simple measure of user satisfaction ignores the fact that students are sort of co-producers of their own education. Now, second, while most librarians will tell you that they understand the major factors that are influential in determining a student's satisfaction with the service, they'll also tell you that individual students react very differently to the same provision. So why is this? Well, we know from the general literature on user satisfaction with services that people tend to be satisfied when their perceptions of the service match their expectations. When it falls short of those expectations, they tend to be dissatisfied. Begs the question, what determines their expectations? Now, the answer is actually pretty wide. Previous experience of similar services, what they've been told to expect, the general reputation of the institution, what they've been told by the provider of those services, and of course their actual individual needs and characteristics. If you look at the equivalent work in health, for example, we know there that the main two things that determine whether a patient is happy with their hospital treatment is how old they are and what socio-economic group they come from. If you are an older lady, let's imagine my mum. She's an older pensioner. She's gone into hospital. She comes from a fairly working class background. She's going to be pretty satisfied with anything, irrespective of the outcome. If you take a middle class, professional, younger woman, she's likely to be dissatisfied with what could be the same service. So it's really, really important that when we measure satisfaction with a service, we know what it is that we're judging. Now, I'm going to move quickly on to the market for underground education. If we're going to move to that with student satisfaction at its centre, we might need to control for some of these other factors if we're really going to make a judgment about what it is that's being delivered. Now, the third reason I would suggest for caution in terms of relying entirely on a student satisfaction measure is it only measures one aspect of value. So it only measures what's called finalist utility, the particular benefit to the individual or group of individuals. What it doesn't measure is collective utility. And we know that there's plenty of broader consumers of undergraduate education than the undergraduates themselves. I mean, business, government, parents, employers generally. And I think the government itself recognises that by saying that it will continue to fund teaching of STEM subjects. So it's recognising there is this potential broader benefit exists. So we also need to develop ways of measuring this broader set of benefits. Now, Lord Brown in his paper argued that student satisfaction is the best available, if you like, the least bad option in terms of measuring the value. So it's the best proxy for value that's available to us. Now, you're all going to have your individual views on that. The one thing I would say is that if Vice-Chancellors and other decision makers, it's going to be very important for them to develop a more detailed understanding and a more nuanced view of the relationship between outcomes, satisfaction and reputation. For example, most librarians would say that their National Student Survey question on libraries is something of a blunt instrument. That's the most polite version I've had of comments on that question. And I can't see that we can do anything but revisit some of those measures because of their central importance when we start to generate a market. Now, these are some of the issues that have been raised with me on my travels around the country meeting our members. And I'd like to say thank you to all of those who've taken the time to come talk to me, and I'm hoping to go around and see many more over the next few months. I'd like to thank you all for your warm welcome, actually, because it's really been very refreshing after a career in politics. I'd like to finish, though, with and picking up on something that David said. There are a number of things that I found really striking about these conversations, and one is the fact that there are a number of very common concerns that run across the whole of the academic library sector. And that's really irrespective of mission group, geography, history, etc. But I would also say that mission groups aren't necessarily a particularly good guide to some of the issues that concern libraries. I don't think it's very clear cut by mission group. And so I think as a word to JISC collections, I think very appropriate that you consider that, but mission groups may not always be a good way of capturing the divergent interests of members. So I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me, and I'm hoping to meet many more of you over the coming months. So thank you very much.